Welcome back to This is a Commander channel, where this is a Commander channel, and today I'm going to talk about Commander, Tough Rules, and Cool Interactions, episode 139. Today's episode is going to take a look at one of the new legendary creatures from Bloomburrow, and it's already in the top 5 most popular commanders from that set on EDHREC, so clearly it will be very popular, and you're likely to come across it in some games if you're not already planning on building it yourself. Also, its effect is likely to cause it to show up in the 99 of some other decks. So, what's the card and why are we covering it today? Ygra, Eater of All, and I'm probably mispronouncing that. Is it Ygra? 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 I'm going to go with Ygra for the rest of the video, because I think that's how it's pronounced. Ygra, Eater of All, has 3 abilities, but we're going to focus on its static ability that says, other creatures are food artifacts in addition to their other types and have 2 tap, sacrifice this permanent, you gain 3 life. So some important things to note are that this affects all creatures on the battlefield, not just the ones that you control. It adds the type artifact and subtype food to the creatures. It doesn't remove any of their previous types. And then the important part for this video especially is that it doesn't specify non-token creatures. Some of you might be wondering why this is important or of note, and of course I wouldn't be making this video if it weren't noteworthy. 3 weeks ago, I made a video about how players are still running Academy Manufactor in Shelob and Brenard decks, and how they probably shouldn't be, as they have a sort of negative result, or a non-bow, the non-combo, result with the Manufactor. And it is still, even now as I'm making this video, showing up in over 1/4 and 1/3 of those decks respectively. And then, for context, the Manufactor is showing up in almost 1/2 of all of Ygra decks. If you haven't watched that episode, please do, as it will provide a lot of context for this episode. It's linked down in the video's description, but long story short is that those 2 commanders each have an ability that cares about creatures dying, and then they make a token copy of them, except that the tokens that they make are modified in a way that also makes those tokens artifacts and food. If you triggered their abilities while controlling an Academy Manufactor, then his replacement effect would cause you not to make those normal token copies of creatures that happen to be food, and then also creating a treasure and clue token. But because of the wording on the Manufactor, you would just end up with a standard food token with none of the abilities, none of the effects from those creatures that died and triggered those commanders. So now let's take another look at Ygra's static ability. It says that other creatures are food artifacts in addition to their other types. So let's say you were to use one of the new cards from Bloomburrow that has Offspring, which is a kicker-like ability that says you may pay an additional 2 generic as you cast this spell. If you do, when this creature enters, create a 1/1 token copy of it. This is a very cool way to sort of double up on some creature effects, and if you can populate those tokens, then you can get even a whole lot more value from them. If you controlled a card like Doubling Season, then its replacement effect on it of, if an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. That replacement effect would cause you to make more of those Offspring tokens of those creatures. So clearly, this means that a card like Academy Manufactor, with its replacement effect, would be a non-bow for these kinds of cards in a Ygra deck. If you're making any token copies of a creature, because Ygra makes creatures also be an artifact food, and if you created a token via something like Offspring, you're setting up a triggered ability that creates a creature token, and that creature token is also now a food token. So the Manufactor would just replace that with a standard food token with none of that creature's abilities, right? Well, in this case, no. That wouldn't be the result. In fact, the Manufactor wouldn't see or care about those tokens at all. So let's get into the why. Why does the manufacturer not care about Ygra, or the effect that it adds? Effectively, tokens are actually created before they enter the battlefield. They're created as the spell or ability, the effect that creates them resolves. And then they are represented on the battlefield by a token. Often an official token card that we get from WotC, or anything else that we as the players use to represent them. So now let's take a look at the comprehensive rules and see what they have to say about this. CR 701.6b says that if a replacement effect applies to a token being created, that effect applies before considering any continuous effects that will modify the characteristics of that token. If a replacement effect applies to a token entering the battlefield, that effect applies after considering any continuous effects that will modify the characteristics of that token. So what this means is that the continuous effects from the static ability on Ygra that add the artifact food type of the creature won't be applying to them until they're on the battlefield, which is after they've been created. And the manufacturer only alters the tokens as they're being created. The reason the manufacturer messes up Brenard's and Shelob's ability is that their ability is the one that's actually doing the creating of the tokens, and it's also defining what those tokens are, in this case, also being an artifact food. I'm going to make a metaphor. This isn't a one-to-one metaphor, but just an attempt to further explain why this results the way that it does. And because I'm worried that some people might still be confused by this. It can be hard for you to wrap your head around this whole, why is it makes them creatures that are also food tokens, and this thing cares about food tokens being created, and this whole idea of like, when is something created? So I'm going to make this metaphor again. It is not a one-to-one metaphor. This is not identical or similar one-to-one, but I hope that it might help some of you that might still be confused. If you controlled both Goreclaw, Terror of Kalsisma, and Elishnorn, Grand Cenobite, the Norn gives your creatures on the battlefield +2 to their power, and then Goreclaw makes your 4+ power creature spells cost 2 less to cast. So if you had a River Bear in hand that costs 3 mana and a green, it costs 4 mana in total, and is a 3/3 while in your hand and while on the stack, while yes, it would be a 5/5 on the battlefield from Norn's static ability applying to it, but in the process of it being a spell on the stack and waiting, resolving to becoming a permanent on the battlefield, it is still just a 3/3, and the Goreclaw would not reduce that as a creature spell on the stack. So it's kind of like how something becomes a spell and resolves and is now a permanent. It's kind of like that. There's this transition zone where something doesn't see something. So it's kind of similar. Again, it's not a one-to-one metaphor, but I hope that kind of gives you an idea of how certain things don't see something until that something is a certain kind of thing already out on the field. So I hope that helped. I hope it didn't make things more difficult. Again, not a one-to-one metaphor. Please don't take it as such, but it's kind of the closest thing that I can think of just off the top of my head. Anyhow, that's all I've got for today's episode. As always, I hope that all of you have found this video to be entertaining at least, and I hope that a few of you have even learned something about the crazy rules in this great game of Magic. Have a good one. Ta-ta. I don't have any bonus questions or anything like that for today's episode. So if anybody is sticking around, are you excited for Bloomburrow? Just reading through Reddit and stuff like that. I'm a big Redditor. Seems like a lot of people are really interested in this set. A lot of LGSs are showing a lot of good, healthy number of pre-orders of boxes and product and stuff. So are you guys hyped for this? I've never really gotten into the Redwall, I think, is what I hear a lot of people make comparisons to. I was not into Redwall as a kid, but I actually think that the setting of this set is actually one of the more magic feeling sets that we've gotten in the last 2-3 years. We've gotten a lot of interesting, weird things. We've gotten murder mysteries, like Clue. We've gotten, I mean, just as far back as like Strixhaven, we've gotten like Harry Potter kind of inspired world. We've gotten 1920s gangster with Capenna. We've gotten the Western kind of thing. Like, we've been getting a lot of these kind of things. So the fact that this is inspired from this Redwall thing is still pretty obvious that it's inspired by Redwall. But like, for me, as somebody who isn't a Red, I just look at the set and it does kind of look and feel like a Magic set, just with cute, cuddly animals. But it actually feels like Magic, whereas a lot of these other things feel like, Western version of Magic. It feels like 20s gangster version of Magic. It feels like Harry Potter Hogwarts version of Magic. This one, I'm not familiar with Redwall, but just looking at the cards, looks pretty cool. I'm pretty hyped for it. Interesting cards coming out. Is there any other cards that you guys think I should cover? I think there's a couple. There's that new one that's like Teferi's Protection. I might cover that card because I feel like that one might confuse some people, just as Teferi's Protection confuses a lot of people. So who knows? Maybe we do a video on that. Whatever. All right. If you guys have stuck around this late into my rambling, you're a real trooper. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Ta-ta.